Welcome back to the S&T podcast. Today we are talking about the Big 12, which might be the most influential conference in the college football playoff series this year. I mean, in my opinion, it's going to be Texas Tech and BYU. Arizona State is going to have a decent chance. Kansas State is my dark horse, but Cezanne, let me know what you think.
All right. Yes, the Big 12 is a very interesting conference each and every season, especially this year as well, based on some things that have happened over the offseason and regarding last season's performance as well. The Big 12, just like the ACC, is kind of the second tier of conferences in the college football realm. Of course, the Big 10 and SEC are running things. Right behind them, the ACC and the Big 12 kind of just trying to survive in recent years as a conference and keep their relevance nationally alive. So a big boost for them last year was the outbreak of Texas Tech, and Texas Tech came out of nowhere and basically went from a pretty irrelevant team that on the national stage, at least very irrelevant when it came to the championship conversation and playoff conversation and whatnot. All of a sudden, Texas Tech goes on a run, goes 11-1, only losing one game last year in a game that their quarterback was injured in, and then they won the Big 12, made it to the playoff before losing to Oregon. Just was a resurrection for not only the Red Raiders, but kind of for the Big 12 and as a whole, because Texas Tech was able to be probably, show that they were a real contender up until that loss to Oregon last season that the national stage and the playoff committee had to respect versus like, the year before that Arizona State made it in, but no one really believed in Arizona State, even though they showed us something in that game against Texas and whatnot. Just as a whole, the Big 12 has kind of been a little bit written off when it comes to the championship conversation, and Texas Tech was, a really good surprise Cinderella for them last year. So once again, I do believe the conference championship will be a rematch between BYU and Texas Tech. And I say this because as much as the Big 12 is very chaotic, there tends to be some teams that consistently perform well each and every year. There are teams that will have a good year one season and a bad year the next season, so you don't really know what they're going to do. Versus teams like the Kansas States and the Iowa States, who are more of the consistent teams in this conference that always seem to finish at the top, and you can kind of bet on them to be the biggest contenders in the conference. BYU has become that team in the Big 12. They are the model of consistency. Going back to their days as an independent and in the Mountain West and whatnot, BYU has always been a very solid football program, and that has not changed since joining the Big 12. This has probably been their most competitive conference they've been in up to this point, and it still has not rocked them at all. I mean, last year, the only two games they lost were both to Texas Tech. Other than that, they went 12-0. So BYU has no problem in the Big 12. Even though it's a step up in competition, they have not withered at all, and BYU continues to be a standout football program. So I believe they're going to do the same exact thing they did last year, and they're going to win another 10, 11, 12 games and make it back to the Big 12 championship. Texas Tech, obviously, on the other hand, is a little bit more interesting because of what happened over the offseason with Brendan Sorsby and whatnot. But now that we know that they will not have Brendan Sorsby as their quarterback, it looks like it's going to be their guy, Will Hammond. Will Hammond, a veteran, senior from Houston, who has been on their roster for a couple years. He backed up, what was his name last year when they went to the playoff? Barrett Morton. He backed up Barrett Morton last year. Will Hammond has had some experience. He seems to be a competent quarterback. So I do believe that even though they're not getting the guy in Brendan Sorsby they thought they were getting, I do believe Will Hammond will still be a very solid quarterback option for them. So I think it will be enough to get them back to another Big 12 championship just because of the talent that the Red Raiders are now boasting with their build up from the NIL and the transfer portal and all that. This team was not just a quarterback. You know what I mean? Last year they did not make it to the playoffs just because of their quarterback. And the same thing this year as well, even with not having Brendan Sorsby. This entire program is on the up and ups. And I believe that it will be the strength of the entire football team that will take them back to the heights that they made it to last year. So I do believe it will be a rematch between BYU and Texas Tech. I think they are the best two teams in the Big 12. Of course, right behind them, you have teams like Utah and Houston. Now, I'm kind of down on Utah just because of them losing their coach. who's been there for so long. I feel like, when things like that happen, when you have a coach that's been there for 10, 15 years straight and all of a sudden you lose them, that the next season is going to be kind of a down year per se. I'm not saying Utah's going to be bad. They were right there last year. I believe they went 10-2 or yeah, they went 10-2 last year. But I just don't see them competing at the same level they have been for the past couple seasons, at least for this year. I think it'll be kind of a rebuild, kind of find their identity again year for Utah. So I'm not saying they'll be bad, but I just don't think they'll finish at the top. But of course, Utah always a team to watch. Houston, the Houston Cougars have been mentioned several times. I have heard their name come up for this upcoming season. A lot of people are high on Houston. They have a great coach down there as well. Their quarterback, Mr. Connor Wegman, came back. He was the transfer from Texas A&M. He's coming back for another season, and that proves to be some veteran presence for them at the quarterback position. So that should elevate their playing level. And just a solid football program in general. They have been for several years now. Houston has been in the top 25, which seems like at least, one or two times each and every season, if not more. And this is a team that won 9, 10 games last season as well. So Houston is going to be right there contending for the Big 12. And then you also have Iowa State and Kansas State, like I mentioned, two of the older, more historic Big 12 partners who have been in this conference for a long time, holding it down. And ever since, Oklahoma and Texas left, they kind of are the perennial Big 12 teams, I would say. Kansas State kind of had an off season last year. They came down to earth. They went 6-6, so it was kind of a bad year, down year for them. Iowa State, kind of the same. They went 8-4, which is still pretty solid, but compared to making it to the Big 12 championship like they did a couple seasons ago against Arizona State, down year for them as well. So I feel like those two teams are going to be back to their normal trajectories as well, and they're going to be forces to deal with, especially since Kansas State kept their quarterback Avery Johnson for another season, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. Iowa State lost a lot of players to Penn State based on their head coach moving over there. They lost Matt Campbell, their head coach, to Penn State, and he took a lot of their players with him, including their quarterback Rocco Beck, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. So I do think Iowa State will be in a little bit of a limbo, kind of like Utah. They might be finding themselves this next season, so we'll see how they do. But yes, I do believe those are the most prominent teams looking to contend in the Big 12 this season. Of course, you got like Arizona and Arizona State as well. You got TCU, you got Baylor, you got Kansas. Oklahoma State as well is very interesting. I did want to talk about Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State went 1-11 last season. For anybody who wasn't paying attention last year, Oklahoma State, yes, the Cowboys went 1-11 last season. Now, it's still crazy even looking at that now because it's like, wow, this is like a respected football program. At least they were for many years, to only win one game out of 12 games last season. I mean, even Colorado won 3. Like, and as bad as Colorado was last year, Oklahoma State 1-11. So I don't know what this football program is going to look like, but they finally fired Mike Gundy, who was their coach for like 10, 15 years, who was holding it down for them. Finally fired him. And then they got the quarterback and the running back from North Texas last season, the North Texas team that was one game away from making the playoff, by the way. Their coach took the job at Oklahoma State, and he brought over their quarterback, Drew Mestamaker, and the running back, blank on his name right now. Hold on. But both of those guys were like all-American type players, and I do believe that they could bring a spark to Stillwater of this upcoming season for the Cowboys. So Oklahoma State is a big question mark for me because I don't know how good they're going to be. It's, a rebuild year and all, but I think the talent that they got over from North Texas is going to perhaps give them a boost in the Big 12. Caleb Hawkins, the running back from North Texas last season, was an All-American. So going to be very interesting for Oklahoma State. They basically went and got a nice trio of talent from another program, a lesser program in the Group of 6, and we'll see how that translates to the Big 12 level. But yeah, and I do believe that BYU will win the Big 12 this season, even though it will be a rematch. I think BYU will get revenge for the outcome last year and get the best of the Red Raiders this time around. And BYU will make their first playoff this upcoming season. Very first time they will make the playoff if they make it this season. So I think BYU has the talent to do it. They have shown their consistency over several years now, including the years that they've been in the Big 12. And I do believe that they will just be a little bit better than Texas Tech this season, maybe thanks to them not having Brendan Sorsby or whatnot. But I think BYU just will get the best of them and that they will be the Big 12 best team and representative for the playoff this upcoming season. So once again, though, I do think the Big 12 will only get one team in. If they get two, it's going to be another scenario kind of like last year where it was like, well, does BYU still have an argument even though they went 11-1 and they're only or 11-2 and their only two losses were to Texas Tech and that one of them was in the conference championship type thing. It wasn't enough last year, though, and that's with a team that basically only lost one regular season game. So if they couldn't get in last year, I don't really think that door is really too wide open for them. So the Big 12 still probably only going to get one team in. We'll see. But that is my prediction for the Big 12.